Hey everyone, this is Cameron from Renegade Animation on renegadepopculture.com. If you like what we do, please give us a like, a follow, and a rating on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to us. We are everywhere. Make sure to share out the episodes, and if you can, consider supporting our Patreon. That way, we can keep doing what we love, and that's talking about the utterly, totally Brat anime summer season. And now, on with the show.
What's going on, everyone? Welcome to another episode of Renegade Animation on the Renegade Pop Culture Podcast Network. My name is Mike. I'll be your host for this evening. Joining me, as always, is the animation guru himself, Cameron.
Howdy, howdy.
And returning once again to the Anime Book Club, we got Teresa.
Hey everyone.
This is our summer 2024 anime impressions. I'm going to get my first takeaway out of the way now. Out of all the summer seasons that we've covered, this one is easily the best. If for no other reason, I'm not going to say there was no terrible animes to cover, but this had the least disasters, to put it lightly. Cameron, would you agree with the statement?
Yeah, no, that's a very good takeaway outside of the as usual takeaway of there's way too much anime getting released. This was a surprisingly good summer season. Most of the time, when we cover summer seasons, it's usually the worst one. There are maybe a few surprises here and there. There's a lot of experimentation, but most of the time, season is frankly not the greatest one because we usually go from like spring, fall, winter, and then summer in terms of what the best seasons were. But summer honestly might be better than the spring season of this year, even though the spring season was still good overall. But after I got through all the good shows through the summer season, I was like, I have more favorite shows from this season than last season.
Yeah, that's honestly something I did not see coming. Teresa, what about you?
I don't know if I could say I have more favorite, but I definitely one of my takeaways was that all the worlds in like the isekai and like the adventurers, there was none where I was like, this world sucks. I don't care. I was like, you know what? I'm like interested in all these different worlds. Like nothing was like super offensive at all, which is always a blessing. And I definitely felt that the characters, like maybe they've been listening to our podcast, but the characters were stronger. Most of the time, I was bored, which is not a crime, really. So I definitely could see that improvement.
And we talked a lot of shows this season. We had maybe like 30 shows we went over.
About that.
Yeah.
So it's like we had Why Does Nobody Remember Me in This World? Wisteria, Wand and Sword, The Elusive Samurai, I Parry Everything, Bye Bye Earth, A Nobody's Way Up to an Exploration Hero, The Osan Newbie Adventurer, My Dear Friend Nokotan, 2.5D Seduction, Makine, Too Many Losing Heroines, VTuber Legend, Mayonaka Punch, Red Cat Ramen, Alia Sometimes Hides Her Feelings in Russian, Days with My Stepsister, Pseudo Harem, Senpai is an Otoko Noko, Love is Indivisible by Twins, My Wife Has No Emotions, Twilight Out of Focus, No Longer Allowed in Another World, The Strongest Magician in a Demon Lord's Army was Human, Failure Frame, Dahlia in Bloom, Delico's Nursery, A Journey Through Another World, Raising Kids While Adventuring, Quality Assurance in Another World, Dungeon People, Soshimen, How to Become Ordinary, Nare Nare, Cheer for You, and finally, Tatsu Ketsu, Fate of the Majority. Heads up, we are going to talk about the Suicide Squad Isekai and Sakuna of Rice and Ruin in their own episode. But even then, we could have cut a few of these out anyway.
Yeah.
Like some of them could have been, like this is a minor takeaway, but some of these could have been shorts. Like Red Cat Ramen and Pseudo Harem. But let's start with a takeaway that I think we all have. So takeaway number one, anime and YouTube. Quite a few shows this season talked about the YouTube influencer VTuber scene. most importantly from VTuber Legend and Mayonaka Punch. It was really cool to see how both shows tackle the online influencer scene.
I think one thing that really stood out in, I think it was Mayonaka Punch, was how the anime visualized negative comments. It looked exactly how it feels to get that kind of feedback. And for like some of the bigger YouTube channels and other like social media influencers, I can only imagine just getting barraged with that much negativity. You have to have a thick skin to deal with all that, or else it can be all consuming like that.
And I also like the fact that both shows have very different cast of characters, but some of them are kind of chaos goblins because VTuber Legend is all about how one VTuber got super drunk, did not turn off her stream, and after a drunken night of shenanigans, became one of the most highly acclaimed VTubers. And I'm not just praising this show because a friend of mine is in this show. It's a very delightful show that finds a way to make the chaos of it all endearing. And the same goes for Mayonaka Punch, which the whole appeal of that show, besides the premise of our lead befriending a group of vampires, is the fact that they're all kind of the worst.
Yeah.
Teresa, what did you think about these?
Definitely they have some group dynamics to work through. But I think it's very funny. Also, I work in social media, so it was very interesting to see like the commentary on being famous or wanting to be famous, because they are definitely like, if I do this, I'm gonna get $1 million. I'm gonna make so much yen. I'm gonna make so much money. And I was like, that's like literally not how it happens. But I do like I feel like that's what people think YouTubers do, is like, oh, you just keep making videos, and then as soon as you hit 1 million followers or whatever, like you're set. And that is not true. Otherwise, I probably wouldn't have a job. But it's definitely like interesting to see it kind of like so normal place that this is like an aspiring job, even for people, even if they're vampires and whatnot. I just thought that was really funny. I do definitely think like chaos goblins makes sense for the vampires and how they're just, eating lollipops and running around. I thought that was just kind of an interesting thing. I also thought it was interesting that they were talking about YouTubers in the way that they're like live streaming, almost like a Twitch like person, and not like people who make polished videos like a Kylie Jenner or something like that. So I also thought that was like very interesting that both shows chose to go the route of like a streamer getting famous by like talking and getting like, people obsessed with them, honestly, is the short term of what they're trying to do. I thought it was really funny. I did like both shows. I think I like Mayan Naka Punch a little bit more just because I feel like it's almost like she's going to learn a lesson from like all of these antics versus, and the other one is like, oh, I kind of messed up, but really I just revealed my true self. So I don't know. It's like different arcs living your life on screen.
Would you say that either of these shows like glamorize or hide a lot of the more
I
like
think it is
behind the
hide the
scenes
boring part.
antics? Like, would you say this does like kind of what a lot of idol anime do, where does this one hide a lot of like the
I think
behind the
that's
scenes stuff?
actually, especially in the VTuber one, I definitely thought that was more true on, where they were like, oh, we always thought you were crazy and you were going to mess up. And that's exactly why we signed you and wanted to like exploit you. And we're just like waiting for it to happen. Because that's honestly how a lot of them get popular. I would say, it depends on the agency. Like, how crazy you want people to get, because people started getting in trouble, with FTC, getting in trouble for doing bad pranks, things like that. But I do think in Mayonaka Punch, it's more kind of playful and glamorized, but I think that's just because it's like you're dealing with vampires and whatnot. But I thought it was very funny where they're like, this is how you upload a video. You come up with a title, you come up with a thumbnail, you come up with this. And I was like, that is exactly what you do. And then you just keep making content and you wait to see what people like, and then you make more of it. That's like dead on like the way people grow a following.
That's true. I think what also works about Mayonaka Punch is the fact that it's by the director of Ya Boy Kong Ming,
Yeah, for
So
sure.
That explains everything.
there's a way to make the crummiest people on the planet endearing. Like,
Yeah.
even if these people are the worst, you still want to root for them. It's the Konosuba formula. They're the worst, but you still want to see them reach their goal. It's not like It's Always Sunny where it's like, you
That's
better
true.
not do anything.
I feel like there are a little bit of many, it depends on the some influencers I do think are, I would aspire to be them in a way, but I do think a lot of ones that get really big as they're being slightly just a line of obnoxious and entertaining. And that gets people to keep watching them each day because they don't know what they're going to do next.
That's true. At least this isn't like that one VTuber show. I think it was like last year that came out that was all snake oil salesmanning NFTs.
Yeah, I remember that, and I think
We did not talk about it. We were like, no, we're not giving this a time of day.
yeah, I'm glad we avoided that one where these two shows more like they're positively representing the whole content creator atmosphere, which I liked, and it's all about making compelling characters that you want to see them succeed in both shows.
Yeah. And sometimes, especially with Mayonaka Punch, some content creators are just not great people. So,
Very.
who would like to do the next takeaway or a takeaway that they have?
I was just gonna say, I kind of piggybacking on that one of what I just observed was just like there's a lot of zany female characters who are like coming in to light up the room and the story, and you like can't look away from them. And I think that's very much in both the shows that we just talked about, the VTuber and the Mayonaka Punch, but also in the My Dear Friend and then Alia, in terms of like the side characters, like her sister, everyone's kind of being like super extra just because, and I feel like they're just kind of kicking it up a notch to get basically to keep people's attention. But I mean, in some shows I don't mind it, and other shows I'm like, oh, this is like the obnoxious friend. But I definitely saw that trend.
I think that's true, especially with My Dear Friend Nokotan,
Yes.
which has become the shitpost darling of the season. Which I'll talk a little bit more about it with another takeaway. But Mike, what's your next takeaway?
I want to piggyback off what Teresa said in terms of like these zany female characters. I have been noticing that a lot more this season. And My Dear Friend Nokatan is, as you put it, Cameron, the ultimate shitposting anime because normally we make fun of animation that obviously doesn't mesh with the backgrounds and stuff, but the fact that this is a comedy and it's doing all of this on purpose, it just makes it that much more entertaining. All the stuff with the deer is I can't. This is perfect for like late night television.
It helps like if you love shows like Cromartie High School, it's
Mhm.
in that vein. It's like it might be a zany random anime, but there's still a rhythm to it. And if you need just one impression of this show, go online, go to the Crunchyroll YouTube page, and watch the scene where Nokotan enters the classroom. That scene will give you everything you need to know. My next one is how to do revenge stories the right and wrong way. And I mean, like, yes, this could very well be a subjective thing. I don't think it is anymore. With so much anime coming out, there are blueprints in shows that say this is the right way to do it, this is the wrong way to do it. And it's not like I want every show to be like this one show that does well, but I wanted to its takeaway are the things that it does well. We have two revenge stories this season: The Elusive Samurai and Failure Frame. Failure Frame might very well be the worst anime of the season. Maybe next to the Death Battle anime, Tatsuketsu. Failure Frame's biggest problem is that it's just another incel revenge fantasy. It's every person in this show is the worst, except for our lead. And I watched a little more than I probably should have, but everyone later on in this show are just rapists, just shitty,
Ugh.
harassy, terrible people. There's no nuance. It's as shallow as a puddle in the Texas summer heat. It's unpleasant to go through, and it's just every other revenge fantasy that you've seen. He doesn't get the best powers, quote unquote, but he finds a way to make them useful. He is apparently actually super smart, and only the one person or a small handful of people can understand side with our lead. And I get that you want to stack the deck against our lead, but it's not in a very endearing way.
It just feels too mean-spirited.
It's way too mean-spirited. We've seen anime where the goddess is actually the worst person in the room, but we've also seen it done better. Or there's like a reason for them to be like, hey, I'm going to be kind of terrible. While the Elusive Samurai, while having some of the best animation of the season and of the year from Cloverworks and its super talented team, and while the Elusive Samurai has a lot of historical context that may hamper its experience for some people, there's this beauty to the underlying tone of connection and our lead finally becoming free, like showing his true colors, spreading his metaphorical phoenix wings. It makes for a more interesting show, even with how zany it can be and how fast-paced it is to introduce a few new characters. They're likable. You want to see him take revenge against the guy who killed his family and is taking over Japan. And I'll just be blunt. I'm sure the person who made Failure Frame tried their hardest. Nobody wants to read or watch your revenge fantasy that you came up with. I'm sorry, nobody does. Who cares? Failure Frame is the prototypical edgelord fantasy that we need to stop seeing, because who cares?
This was one of the first shows that I watched doing the preparation for this podcast, and I couldn't make it past episode 2. I've seen too many isekai to like have any sort of patience for what this story was trying to tell. So I was way too happy to move on after the show.
Yeah, I didn't even watch it because you guys said it was so bad.
It's not good. It has a few cool monster designs, but outside of that, there's not much else to it.
Not that this means they take it with a grain of salt, but on Crunchyroll, there are 46,000 likes to the first episode, which there's a lot of edgelords who identify with it, or someone spammed it.
I don't trust the...
It says 4.5 stars.
Yeah, I don't trust that at all. Another takeaway I have is the romance was good, but very dour this season. We had a lot of romance anime this season, and I would say that a whole lot of them, while having some quirky elements to them, like Machine, Too Many Losing Heroines, were all fairly... I'm not saying it as a bad thing that were all kind of negative Nancy's, but it was interesting, to say the least. Like, there was some goal to make a lot of these have a more grounded sense of realism.
Sometimes that worked really well. Like, I think probably the best one of the bunch is Twilight Out of Focus, because the characters, even though the supporting characters are all kind of silly in their own way, like I think the director is clearly bipolar, but our two romantic leads definitely felt the most real. You wanted to see their romance blossom in a very organic fashion. Conversely, you have Days with My Stepsister. It's too classy to be the trashy version of that exact premise that we've seen before, but in trying to avoid all of the tropes and cliches, it ends up kind of doing nothing, despite having some pretty animation.
I felt like Days with My Stepsister became boring because of how hard it went with trying to not be the trash fire incest fantasy that a lot of people are expecting it to be. I did like how it was more interested in focusing on the bond and the boundaries that they were making for our two leads. Mm-hmm. But I found myself to be bored after a while. I was almost falling asleep, and a few pretty decent cinematic touches on an okay animation quality didn't really make me want to continue it.
I didn't like the pacing. Well, also I was confused. I was like, you guys just met and you're living together like tomorrow? Okay, that's weird. But I was like, yeah, also the dad like disappeared and we only saw the mom like a little bit. And I was like, okay, that's a little weird. But I just thought it was so like glacial slow. But I like the idea of people like our parents got together and we're basically strangers and now we have to live together. Like that's weird. Explore that. Like I like that idea.
It's one of those anime that has a more interesting premise than it's presenting to us.
Mm-hmm.
Same with Love is Indivisible by Twins. Like, it's the classic tragic love triangle of two sisters who love the same guy, and they can't quite work out how that's going to work. Can one of them date him? And if they break up, can the other go up and ask him out and such? What doesn't work about that show is also that it's a bore and the animation is just not all that stellar. It's the fact that the characters suck. The twin sisters are constantly playing mind games with each other and the boy that they supposedly love. And the boy is kind of a victim in it until he's not. And after a while, I was just like, I don't care what happens after this. I think my favorites of the romance anime were Twilight Out of Focus and Makine Too Many Losing Heroines because they had a more substantial core to their storytelling. Something like Pseudo Harem had a interesting idea with the bond between two drama club members and how the girl lead is willing to portray all the different harem girl tropes for practice, but also to swoon over the lead. But the lead's not the most interesting, and it's the fact that there's just not enough substance to the show to justify it being 30 minutes. And then we get like Alias hides her feelings in Russian. It's trying to be the new Kaguya-sama. It's both of them trying to like fighting hard to confess to one another, and neither one want to be the one to say it first.
Yeah. And the pacing once again.
And there's also like one of the girls is actually really into incest fan service anime, and it's a little too fan servicey for me. I don't mind it. It's just it needed to dial it back a little, especially with that first episode that was more than willing and happy to animate really well a scene of the guy putting on Alia's thigh-high sock. It's like, okay, anime, okay, buddy.
Yeah, it definitely had those moments. I think I liked that one like just well enough, and it was cool how the English dub actually got an actress who speaks Russian to Alia. So that's cool.
That is cool. At least it's not my wife has no emotions. Like, that show is so terrible. It's such a trash fire of a show. The guy is he's so frustrating.
How to get a robot.
Yeah, I have such nothing in life that I'm going to buy a robot but then I'm going to fall in love with it. And I get it. It's trying to be Chobits, but we already have a Chobits. We have Chobits at home.
Basically.
And it's also really creepy that the robot doesn't have a moving face. I mean, maybe that's the joke and it's meant to be kind of darkly funny in that regards because I keep thinking she's going to snap at one point, but never does.
No, sadly not.
And then like 2.5D Seduction is trying really hard to be My Dress Up Darling.
Yes.
But again, we have My Dress Up Darling. This is just some misogynistic fans' wish fulfillment wet dream. Oh, someone joins your anime club and she also happens to be a fan of this erotic, ecchi anime. She also happened to have the cosplay outfit on. Oh, she's also happens to be happy to drop clothes to dress up for him. No, Like, I rewatched all of My Dress Up Darling recently, and while I still have some issues with it, it's so good at making those characters more than just the ditzy popular girl who happens to like anime and the shy, shut in guy who has one hobby that could actually help, and have them bond together. This is just, I'm a lonely male anime fan, and this is my wish fulfillment fantasy of finding that one super hot chick who's really into anime, who's also ready to drop her panties for me for some reason. It's no.
I think the problem is 2.5 dimensional seduction is the anime that we all feared My Dress Up Darling would be.
Mhm.
It very much is. Because at least with Makine, Too Many Losing Heroines, it's not only riffing on romance anime tropes, it's really funny, but it has a core of finding connection through heartbreak.
Yeah.
I mean, you just watch that first clip of the blue-haired girl, like, holding back, like, no, don't suck on the straw that was on his mouth. Don't suck from it. And then she realizes she was spotted doing that. It's so funny. This has some of the best character animation, probably some of the best animation of the season. That's all within really good comedic timing. Even within the second episode, where it gets a little too trashy almost, and the teacher walks in on like the male and the other student, and she's just like nonplussed by it. She's like, just get out of here when you're done. Closes the gym door and such through the misunderstanding.
Those teachers are weird.
I know the teachers are weird in this show.
The teacher and I think it's the school nurse who
school nurse
is kind of playing Cupid with these students.
But the underlying core is still strong enough to where it's like, okay, I get it. And Twilight Out of Focus is just a good gay romance. I love the tragedy and the beauty of our two leads and how it's obvious they love each other, but they put boundaries up, and it's just that tug of war of who goes first. And there is actually some, for anime broadcast standards, surprisingly steamy lovemaking. Like, I haven't seen this stuff like this level since, oh, Mike, what was that movie we talked about like 2 years ago, like Strangers by the Shore, where
Yeah.
because it was like, oh, they're showing it, okay. It's like, that's what Twilight Out of Focus is. And I'm really glad Crunchyroll was like, no, we're not going to get rid of it, like with what happened with Interspecies Reviewers, where the third episode came out and then every streaming platform was like, nope, like it's a little too porny for broadcast, we can't show this. And then, like, with the surprise of the season, My Senpai is an Otokonoko. It's funny, I watched 2.5 dimensional seduction, then I watched My Senpai is an Otokonoko, and it was like a punch to the gut of going from one of the worst anime of the season to one of the best, but also a show that's like, hey, you know what? We're going to talk about gender identity. That is going to be the driving force of this show. With our male lead, I think they go by he and him because I don't think the show says they are non-binary, but he presents himself like more feminine.
Yeah.
And if I mess up on it, please tell me.
I got that too.
And I love, like, it might be a love triangle, but
Yeah.
I like the friendship angle of it all and how queer friendly it feels. Like, I haven't seen like criticism of it being like really terrible representation and such, but the core story is also once again good, and that these are all like fully defined and fleshed out characters, and are the one lead who cross dresses is not played for laughs and such, which unfortunately a lot of anime and a lot of SNL from the 90s love to do.
Yeah.
So it was just an interesting romance season, which isn't always the given either. That's what's so exciting about the summer season. You don't quite know what you're going to get.
I honestly prefer having a lot more to talk about, well, in any genre, but for romance, I prefer having more to talk about than like having there only be one or two shows that we get like at all in the season, because when you have more options, you have more chances of getting good shows. But if there's only like one or two, you have to hope they're like the best thing ever, or else nobody will talk about them.
which is something that happened a lot with High Dive and such, where they only had, I think, 3 or 4 shows. We aren't talking about Plus Size Elf, even though I watched the first episode. It somewhat succeeds on its kind of fan service that it wants to, but it's not animated well, so it doesn't look great. But we'll talk about that in a moment. Um, Here's a takeaway. It's more of a question. Did good animation carry some of the weaker shows?
I would say kind of.
I think it depends because, I mean, on the reverse end of the spectrum, you have like Dahlia in Bloom, which has a great story, but its animation looks terrible. So it's definitely where that one, the writing is carrying it. Like, let's talk about Wistoria, one of the more hyped shows from this season, because a common detraction from the show is that its animation is so good that it almost distracts you from the fact that the story is not wholly clever or super compelling. I mean, what do y'all think? Teresa, let's start with you.
I feel like I am more forgiving when the animation is good. I think I'm more annoyed when the pacing, I start noticing it. And I feel like if it's animated well, I will give it more chances. And I'll be like, okay, maybe it's just me that's bored. That kind of thing. But definitely when it's bad, and you're going to know anyway. I feel like it's kind of the way. And it doesn't really make up for it because in the end, we want to return to the characters. And if you don't like the characters, it doesn't matter if it looks good.
So for me, I've always said that simple doesn't necessarily mean bad. And that's kind of my major critique with Wistoria, is that the story is pretty simple, but because the animation is so good, and I do kind of like some of the characters, or at least the main protagonist.
Yeah.
Of course, because it's a fantasy school, they have to have that one red-haired jackass who is just going to be like the absolute worst to our hero for no reason. But that just kind of comes with the territory. As far as the actual story, it's something I can get behind, but it is the animation that has me wanting to see more because it just is that good.
Now, what about something like, because I think another example of the animation carrying the story was Nare Nare, Cheer for You.
Mhm.
On one hand, it's cool to see an anime all about cheerleading, and it's not idol stuff, but even though it does kind of go at it like a typical idol anime, but that's beside the point. I didn't find the story as compelling as others, and I felt like the animation by PA Works was carrying it over the hill. PA Work usually puts out some of the best shows of whatever season they put out a show on, but I was very disappointed with that one, where its animation was great, but it delved into too much of the cute girls doing cute things. But instead of the cute thing, they were just too busy being cute.
Yeah, I watched this. The first episode I think was balanced and good, but the second episode when they really properly get into the cheering and like less flashbacks and like setup, I guess I can see that where like the animation is like almost like glitzing it up, but the story is a little weak in terms of like where is this going? I definitely felt that way after the second episode.
That question of where is this going, I found myself asking a lot in episodes 2 and 3. I still think like because it is PA Works, their animation wizardry did kind of pull me in, even if the story was like kind of meandering in places, and yeah, it did kind of devolve into cute girls doing cute things. I don't know if I can fully recommend this, but if you're that into cheerleading, I could see you getting into it.
But then on the other hand, my dear friend Nokotan doesn't quite have the best animation polish or quality. I mean, it's with studios. They have a level of expectations on them. But at the same time, whereas Dahlia in Bloom's animation hampers the experience, Nokotan is just amplified by the fact that it just goes places with its animation. It sometimes looks really good, sometimes it doesn't. It has weird CGI deer all over the place. It sometimes goes hyper realistic, and then sometimes it doesn't. And I think it just depends on the story and what the show is demanding. If you're an action show, yes, I think you should have good animation and a good story. But for a comedy like this or like Cromartie High School, I think it's okay to have slightly clunkier animation as long as the jokes still hit.
That's the thing with comedy, it almost helps to have, I don't want to say bad animation, but I guess I could say stylized animation, because sometimes comic timing is in the way characters like express themselves, or just conjuring up the most insane visuals for like sight gags. And in the case of my dear friend Nokatan, it's the deer.
Yeah.
I still remember watching the first episode and being like, oh, okay, that's looks good. Oh my God, the deer. Like when they just appear out of nowhere in the background and are just completely CGI. The snappiness of the joke of their arrival is so out of the blue. And it just makes me laugh every time I watch that show. And I won't understand how the dub is only on Amazon Prime, but there's no dub for the Crunchyroll version. So
interesting.
Yeah. Teresa, do you have another takeaway?
Yeah, I would just add on the My Dear Nokatan, like when she starts like losing body parts or whatever, I was like, what's going on in this show? It went where I didn't think it was. I thought it was going to be more cutesy, and then I was like, okay, this show is still dark and not what I expected. I would say my other takeaway that kind of complements that was really like just having conversations about culture, conversations about gender, and kind of like people become friends, because I feel like even sometimes it went from like we're friends and then the romance element, but then other times it's just like, why are we friends in the first place? And I felt like the VTuber, because it was trying to be so present in the now, was talking about like that's how they became friends, is they made the videos together, and like she misses that and everything. And I'm just trying to think about like, that's something I feel like people could relate with. And then in terms of the kind of senpai isn't a Tokuno, that one of just kind of like, you don't want to be friends with me, or do you want to be friends with me? And I'd like, obviously she's obsessed with him, but I feel like, seeing other people's reactions and then still wanting to be friends. And then also in the Mac and Lean one, I think they also, how they became friends is kind of explored, because they're all kind of unrequited love, like the rejected ones. I thought that was really interesting and more deep than I expected from the anime this season.
See, I mean, this is why I like anime. It's more than willing and happy to talk about that stuff. Where sometimes, and it's not always like this with American animation, but sometimes it feels like you have to pull teeth for a show to go a little deeper with its thematic elements sometimes.
Yes.
But otherwise, anime is always ready and willing to talk about things that you normally wouldn't think about, but it's like, oh, that leads to something interesting. Mike, what's your next takeaway?
I have a quick one before I get to my more substantial takeaway. Hulu, aside from the Suicide Squad isekai, was absent this season.
Oh, yeah, that's right. There was no Hulu pickup. And who knows, maybe we'd still be like, why aren't you advertising your shows?
That's always going to be a problem. But jumping back to something that Teresa said, something about exploring friendships and how people bond. We've been seeing that a lot this season with a lot of these shows kind of focusing on school clubs. Like Twilight Out of Focus was set in film club. Pseudo Harem was in a drama club. We have the Lit Club represented by Makin. It's kind of cool how we're actually getting to see in a school setting. You only ever see like the classroom and then maybe like the culture festival, but to actually get to see all these different clubs is kind of nice.
Yeah. It's like school isn't just a big empty building outside of these three locations and such.
What was that one anime where they did, I guess they had the telescope and then they like made the club so they could like go up there and be up there?
Oh,
Do you know?
it was like something like let me see.
But I thought that was another interesting of like showing you how a club gets made, and what like kind of takes to get it started. Because I feel like
Yeah.
it's always like sports club. We need like 5 members for it to be real or whatever, and then they start playing. But this one I thought was more interesting, and I feel like that's what I felt also from Pseudo Harlem and the Machine. Like I just felt like you're seeing clubs that don't necessarily have a lot of people in them.
Insomniacs After School.
That's the
Yes.
one.
Yeah, they're up all night.
Yeah, yeah. So I had a smaller takeaway that, as usual with the summer season, they're trying out new ideas. And I've already mentioned some of them, like pseudo harem. And I want to talk a little bit more about like no longer allowed in another world and quality assurance in another world, because the final takeaway that I have is the Isekai Fantasy series kind of rebounded after last season, where we went from the winter season having really good fantasy shows to having some really mediocre ones. But then with this one, we had a lot more interesting like fantasy stuff. And I think we had no fantasy shows in our favorites from last season. So there are a lot more interesting ones here with content warning, suicide's going to get brought up in this next one. No Longer Allowed in Another World is a pitch black dark comedy anime about a real life poet who was as well known for his many attempts at suicide as was his poetry. And when he gets isekai'd into another world, all he wants to do is either unalive himself until he finds his loved one. And Quality Assurance does this in a very different way, where these two isekai have lead characters who are not power fantasy leads. They're not the wish fulfillment leads of the anime scene. Our lead very much is like his powers are more indirect. He has a huge resistance to poison, but his superpower, his god power, is not really like I can strike you down with a snap of my finger. He'll write a story, a short story about you, and then zap you out of that fantasy world, because this is a fantasy world that is full of people who got isekai there. And to not only see the many, many laughs that this show has, but its different take on the isekai genre is way more interesting than how most do it, where they just play it straight. With this one, it's okay, fine, I'll be the lead character, but I'm not going to like it. It's like that Bob's Burgers gif. It's like, okay, I'll go, but I'm going to complain all the way there. I mean, I don't know. I really liked Not Allowed in Another World because of how, like, yes, it has like sexy cat girl, sexy elf, whatever. They're allowed to be their own characters, and even though they are enthralled with the lead is not enthralled with them. And I love their constant rejection of just like, you're just trying to make sure that the girl he's finding is his girlfriend or not. Yeah, I'm journeying just to make sure of that. It's a refreshing take on the isekai formula.
Yeah,
And
I think that's why I liked it the most. I was like, finally, some guy who's like, I gotta go. I don't want to be here anymore.
I don't want to be here anymore. He's literally the Futurama meme of I don't want to live on this planet anymore. So
He is, and that's why he's probably my favorite isekai protagonist, at least this season, if not out of all the shows that we've covered.
and with quality assurance in another world where a bunch of QA testers got stuck in a VR MMO game. Once again, all these VR MMOs are way better than what they would actually be in real life. But I digress. I like that he is open and willing to avoid using that debug stone that he has. He could do everything like everyone else, but he's one of the few handful of QA testers who do not want to play God. He takes his job as a tester seriously. He doesn't want to use his debug powers unless he has to. And it's like, oh my God, a guy who openly hates the isekai power fantasy wish fulfillment. How does that work? Why is that so hard to come up with? It's such a good hook. And even though, like, it's funny, this show reminds me of a lot of like early, like late 90s, early 2000s fantasy shows because of its art direction. But
Yeah.
it continues to build upon its characters. Like, even though we are slowly introduced to him by the end of the third episode, the little cat animal guy is like not a typical like sleazebag or pervy character. He's very genuine and not perverse at all, at least so far. He has like the mindset of our lead, not just that he wants to be a good tester, but he just wants to relax in life and cater to this one NPC that he has fallen for because of just more poetic beauty than an unhealthy, like, don't fall in love with a fake girl, dude. Just don't. But then we have fantasy shows that are just good fantasy shows with Bye Bye Earth being about the journey of this girl, this human girl who's in a world full of animal people. But instead of being like, oh, weird, or oh, sexy cat harem, or whatever, there's a story. There's lore and world building and like a drive for a character to see if there are other humans in this world. It was surprising to me.
I like that one. I thought the animation was better than I expected. I don't know why I expected it to be different, but I thought it was better than I expected, and I really liked that character. I think that's also one of my, when I like fantasy, adventure, whatever, it's when there's like a reluctant hero and they're kind of like, they didn't ask for these powers, but they have them and they're going to, use them to the best they can, to survive. I always feel that versus the failure one where it's just like super annoying person wanting to flaunt their powers.
Those are usually the better ones where it's about character growth and not just a power fantasy, which is why I'm surprised we got not one but two shows that are like actively against the whole power fantasy tropes and cliches. And also one that is definitely not going to be in my top five, but one that I thought was enjoyable for at least a younger demographic. A Journey Through Another World, Raising Kids While Adventuring. It kind of has this like educational approach to its storytelling where, yeah, the stakes are pretty low, but because or two of our characters are literal children, you're sort of teaching the audience the tropes of the modern isekai through their eyes. I think that's kind of commendable. If this genre is not going to go away anytime soon, like I understand like wanting to like teach the next generation how to tell their own stories.
Then there's also like just being a good fantasy show with I parry everything. Like, yes, he has the one super strong ability that beats every other one. But gee, what do you mean he's a very likable individual and people actually like being around him?
And he helps his community.
It's weird because with shows like, oh, the strongest general in a demon lord's army is human.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, whatever. Disguised human, has to work around it. Oh, by the second episode, it's kind of clear that a lot of the higher ranked members of the demon lord's army are aware that he's not human or what he seems to be. It's like, okay, it's not good enough to be compelling, but
It was watchable.
yeah, it was watchable. It was fine. Then with just like, oh, this last one, the exploration hero, it's like there's a fun idea where a dungeon was made as the center point focus of an amusement park. And yet it tries to combine like fantasy sci-fi elements. It reminded me a little too much of Final Fantasy VIII, but without the cool fantasy sci-fi elements of it. It had an unlikable lead, and then oh, his harem is going to be a bunch of lolly looking characters, even though those characters have fully mature human looks. And it's just like, god dang it. I mean, I get it. Cuteness is a thing that sells, but it's also very creepy when it's executed in a way that is very just gross. But it was just nice to see that, like, even though we make fun of fantasy shows or isekai shows for being unoriginal, tired, and tedious, stuff like also, why does nobody remember me from this world? Even though it also doesn't really hit the highs of like I parry everything or the elusive samurai, it still was decent enough to keep your interest with how they were setting up the mystery of what happened in this timeline over the other world's timeline. And even like something as cutesy and harmless as Dungeon People, while nothing super groundbreaking, the bureaucratic of making a dungeon work has its charm. If you're not going to be wholly original, be interesting at the very least. Outside of that, I don't really have many other takeaways outside of death battle games. You need to get better because I'm sick and tired of watching a death battle game where the rules are confusing as hell.
Yeah, I was like, what is going on the whole episode? And I was like, I have a headache now.
Same.
And even in like, I don't have much to say about Delico's Nursery, vampire slash murder mystery slash babysitting.
That is a very weird premise. And I'm a little sad that like it was one of the late bloomers of the season, so I only got to see one episode of the dub, but in that one episode, they pack a lot, both tonally and just like all these different subplots, all in like 23 minutes. And I know it's not going to end up in my top 5, but it's just so, I'm just so compelled by how they managed to juggle all of that.
Exactly. It's an interesting idea for a show at the very least, because I was not expecting the murder mystery stuff to play up, because the marketing made it feel like, oh, it's about hot vampire dads taking care of their kids.
I also, did anyone worry that they were like raising the kids to eat them?
Oh yeah, I had that thought come in
I was like,
at
oh,
least
they're
once or twice.
obviously evil vampires. And I was like, wait, they want to raise these kids. It's kind of wholesome. That's not what I expected. I was like, oh, phew, good thing. But that's what I was worried about when I watched the first episode.
Yeah, do y'all have any other like final takeaways before we talk about our top 5?
Going back to my first takeaway, I would rather have seasons like this where we're given so many variations on like stories we've seen before or anime about new topics than just continuing the same cycle that we've kind of gotten tired of over the past couple years.
No other takeaways. I would just say I would agree. I feel like I wouldn't say everything was super creative, but I do think most of them didn't do retread of like the last 2 or 3 seasons. And they at least try to pick a premise that like vaguely hadn't been done before. Whether they executed it or not is another thing, but I think it made it easier to watch the stuff than past seasons.
I agree. I think a lot of these shows did that very well. Be interesting, even if you're not great. So, Teresa, let's start with you. What are your top 5 of the season?
My top 5 were The Elusive Samurai, Mayanaka Punch, Twilight Out of Focus, Bye Bye Earth, and then the last one was really hard, but I'm gonna go with Wisteria Wand and Sword because that's one I know that I'm gonna keep watching. And my honorable mentions were the Nair Cheer for You, No Longer Allowed in Another World, and the Soshimamen.
Oh man, Soshimen. What a beautiful show. Like it's maybe a little too slow for some
A
folks.
little too.
Like it's a little too slow, but I was really compelled to see what happens. And man, it had some like almost theatrical quality animation. I was really shocked. Mike, what did you think?
So my top 5, Soshimin is an honorable mention just because, yeah, some of that animation is almost theatrical quality. But let's see. And this is really in no particular order because the good stuff was really that good. So, The Elusive Samurai, Makin, Twilight Out of Focus, for sure. No Longer Allowed in Another World, and probably My Dear Friend Nokitan, just because it is pure insanity.
I had a hard time because I could have easily made this a top 10, and that's not always a given, as usual, with these summer seasons. Yeah, so Elusive Samurai, like, man, that first episode might be the best first episode of any show from this season.
Oh, yeah.
That moment where the priest kicks the lead off the cliff leads to some of the best animation of the year so far. Mayonaka Punch, No Longer Allowed in Another World, Makine, and I'm going to go with, oh, it's tough. It's like a 3-way tie between VTuber Legends, Twilight Out of Focus, and Bye Bye Earth.
Ooh,
But I,
those are tough choices.
but I still really loved My Senpai as an Otokonoko and Quality Assurance in Another World. And Shoshiman is also another honorable mention, along with I Parry Everything in Wistoria and My Dear Friend Nokotan. But yeah, I'm just going to make it a 3-way tie because screw it. There's way too many good shows this season. So VTuber Legends, Twilight Out of Focus, and Bye Bye Earth all tie for the 5th spot, with Otokonoko, Quality Assurance, and Soshimin as honorable mentions. And with that, we are done with the summer anime season. A lot less tedious than I was thinking it was going to be. So keep being surprising, anime industry, and also, stop overworking them to death.
Yes, absolutely.
So next time, Mike and I will be talking about the Terminator anime and Tales of the TMNT.
Yeah, really looking forward to both of those. But until then, Teresa, where can everyone find you online?
You can find me on most platforms at Teresa Electro. That's TE, not TH, Teresa Electro. And let me know what you think of this season.
And Cameron, where can everyone find you?
You can find me on Twitter, Blue Sky, and Instagram at Cam's Eye View. I also have like a Threads and Instagram and such like that. I also have a website called camseyeview.biz where I review animated films and shows from around the world called The Other Side of Animation. I also have a Patreon at patreon.com/camseyeview. That's where you can find me.
And you guys can find me on various social media sites at Captain K42. You can check out my quick thoughts on letterboxd.com/Coach K42. And you can follow Renegade Pop Culture on Facebook and that place at Ren Pop Culture. You can also find us on YouTube, on Podchaser, Consider supporting our Patreon at patreon.com/renegadepopculture. Listen to all of our podcasts on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen. And last but not least, everything can be found at renegadepopculture.com. Need an escape? So do we. That'll do it for this episode of Renegade Animation. We will catch you guys later. Peace out.